What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Glen Drover of the almighty Withering Scorn. Thank you for being here. It is great to have you here, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Good to be here.
anytime, man, anytime. This new Withering Scorn album is absolutely kick-ass. What was the sort of thought process being the debut of it? Was Prophets of Demise meant to sort of be kind of like the beginning of like a series or the beginning of like a new journey in a way, or is this like a very roll of the dice sort of songwriting process?
No, very much so, because we signed a 4 album development deal with Frontiers Worldwide. So this is absolutely the beginning of this new band. And yeah,
Mm.
brand new band. And this is not just I've done one-offs before, but this is not one of them. This is, this is the beginning of hopefully a long-term relationship with these guys.
Was there sort of like a preconceived vision in terms of like the sound in a way? Like when I first listened to it, like the first thought I had in my mind was like a little bit of, I got like a lot of Nevermore vibes behind it in a way that had that sort of like really thrashy but also doomy aspect behind it, very emotional heaviness. Was there sort of like any vision you had in mind going into it, or was it again very like
It wasn't a
improvisational?
thrashy thing. I don't think there's really any of that on the album, but I think I know what you're talking about. It's really, it's just heavy metal. And it's varied, but does come together, I think, very cohesively. Um, no, it wasn't like that. It came around the time of the pandemic. Me and Sean had an idea of doing something. Everybody was, once we got into that a little bit, everybody realized that, okay, there's not going to be any live stuff. And a lot of people turned to recording and, turning inwards and just doing stuff at home or studios or whatever. And it was very easy to put together. I did an album a few years ago that went under the name Walls of Blood, which was basically my album with this concept of having every song have a different singer on it. Some singers I worked with, some I hadn't, but really wanted to and hadn't at that point. Worked out in the end. Henning, who was on the Withering Scorn album, as you know, sang 3 of those songs because a couple of the singers I had in mind didn't work out. So it was like 10 out of the 10 songs, there's like 7 different singers or something like that. Chuck Billy's on there, Todd from Queensryche, Nils from Pagan's Mind, and who also was on an Eidolon album that we did years ago, on and on. And then, and I also asked Joe Tobias around the time I was recording the Walls of Blood album. I reached out to him as a fan, because I've been a huge Faith Warden fan for many, many years, and really respect his playing and that band in a major way. And who is still very influential to me to this day in terms of writing. Jim is one of my favorite writers, Jim Mattheos. So he did a couple of tracks on the Walls of Blood album. I asked him if he would do 1 or 2 tracks for fun. He did. Henning sang on it, like I mentioned. So those guys were easy targets when me and Sean were talking about putting something together. And I knew if they were interested, it would be a great fit. I knew it. I knew it. And I was right, I believe. And I approached them and they were totally down with doing that. And over the last 3 years plus, we periodically worked on this album and finished it.
I got to tell you, the Walls of Blood, I actually really love that Imperium album. I thought like it really had like the ultimate collaboration. Is there going to be more of that in the future? I could almost see like being like
No, I'm going to leave that as a one-off because it wasn't easy to do. It's not easy to try to get all these different singers to do. It's not, I got it done through determination to complete this task, but it was not an easy thing to do. And right now, as far as I can see, which is a long way away, we're probably going to be doing the Withering Scorn exclusively. And but it was fun to do it. Like I said, it was just a one-off thing. I just wanted to work with different singers on one project.
Yeah.
Sean, of course, helped a lot, as we're always in our back pockets doing stuff for each other. And he was actually, Sean was there. It goes under, it was my kind of thing, but Sean was there just as much as he normally is when we do stuff together, because he wrote, I think, the majority of the lyrics, aside from one, I think it was the Alice in Chains cover song. And we did that purely because I when I was in King Diamond, the drummer at the time, John Abear, his friend of his, who was really good at, just doing this chameleon thing, but sounding different, like different singers. And it could sound just like Lane. And I did this song for fun. I thought, hey, would you be, interested in doing a cover song? And I was, yeah, sure. And we did. It was like, geez, it's amazing how much he sounds like. I was like, I have to use this on the album. It was heavy enough, and I knew it would fit and be still be cohesive,
Yeah.
from song to song. I believe.
With the formation of Withering Scorn, was it almost kind of like, Joe, with Joe's history and Fate's Warning, and, you being such a prolific artist from, your time with Megadeth and King Diamond, but, and then, Henning also playing with Legions of the Night, and Sean, of course, with his history as well. Were you all kind of like trying to combine everything you've done together into one project, or were you all kind of like trying to step into uncharted territory that you never really explored before?
No, because I mean, Sean, you're going to hear similarities to what we do from the past because we just write how we feel. We don't change. Oh, we should start writing like this, or we shouldn't do that because it's not in vogue. And we've just always done what we want to do. So there's always going to be a common thing going through a lot of the stuff we do. And being that it is metal still, like the other stuff that we've done in the past, there is going to be you're going to hear some similarities because that's the same people writing the music, but we didn't have any kind of we didn't we had no idea of, it wasn't like we had this big plan of how this is going to be the style of the band and here's how we want to record. We just did what we always have done in the past. Just start writing and just try to write the best songs we can within what we're doing.
You most certainly succeeded, because when you open up with the title track Prophets of Demise, it flows so perfectly when you get into the vision and you get to pick up the pieces and you move forward in a way. I was just wondering, when I hear like the music on here, it's a very emotional album in a way, like the heaviness that's on there, the sort of like darkness that's expressed on there. Is this like project coming from a very personal point of view in a way? Is this coming from like personal emotions or personal feelings, or was there like a lot of external sources of inspiration driving the making of this album?
Well, that's a great question. In terms of the lyrics, well, that's a Sean question, as we
Of
know.
course.
But he always tends to work or write on, it's like most horror movies or some horror movies, everybody dies in the end, that's Sean, that's the way he likes to write but it's a reflection of the music. You can't write, real heavy music, and write about, just candies and clowns, whatever. So he writes, dark subject matter with dark music. And again, it's not like, oh, for this song, it kind of has this kind of feel. Maybe you should try to write about this. He just writes how he just does his own thing. I'm more of that, I collaborate with him with the music. He comes up with a lot of it. I come up with some of it. My role is really a lot of the mechanics of audio engineering. This is home base. Everything is, vocals recorded in Germany, bass is in Connecticut, drums are in Atlanta. Everything comes to me. I put everything together, mix, master, blah, blah, blah. Although we outsource on the master, the next time we'll be doing our own mastering. But came out well, though. And, so that's kind of my role is really, he takes care of the lyrics and some of the music, good portion, probably 2/3. And I take care of ironing, smoothing out his structures and coming up with stuff that I might feed off, certain riffs that he does. I might feed off what he's doing, or I might change things around. We just work together. We always have done it like that. But Sean, the lyrics are his department.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and he likes his style of writing, so that works out really well. So it's a good collaboration there of him coming up with melodies and being able to project the songs as we would want him to with those kind of lyrics. As far as the music, I don't know. That's a good question. Again, I think that we've all gone through some changes in the last few years, and might have hit a couple of rough spots with this whole pandemic and just life in general. I think it's possible that some of it is a little bit of a reflection of what's been going on in the last 3 years. Yeah, sure.
Well, when you are working and whether it will be like mixing and doing that, or you're writing there with your guitar riffs and whatnot, is it better to be like in the company of your other bandmates in a way when writing music together, or do you prefer to all kind of be in your own individual worlds? Isolation is such a great
It
feeling.
all depends. It all depends. Sean writes his lyrics alone. He always has. I don't. I've never stepped into those shoes or been a part of that whole thing. Nor do I care. I have enough work to do, which is again bringing everything in, doing all the mechanics and all the just all the engineering, all my stuff, keyboards, guitars. I got enough on my hands, so I never really cared about that. Sean does his thing with that. As far as other things, yeah, we'll get on Skype or Zoom, and he'll have some idea and he want to show me what it is, or we'll be working on just getting the structures together, because that's how it all starts. It starts with a click and a rough guitar, in Pro Tools. We put a structure together of how we want the song. And once we're finished with that, Sean does the drums, I do the guitar, then we do the bass, then we do the vocals, then I do my solos in the end. That's our procedure and the way I believe it should be done. If you want to go and do keeper guitar tracks to click tracks, God love you. I feel that's backwards, because it's the drums that's who drives the train. You follow the drummer.
Your drummer sucks, your
down,
band
you're playing
sucks.
live, you slow down. If you're playing live and he speeds up, what happens? You don't stay at the same tempo. You have to follow the drummer. It just happens.
Yeah.
So that's very important for me, and that any other way to me is ass backwards. But if that works for you, cool. I shouldn't really say it's a bad thing, but for us it doesn't make sense, maybe because we're old school and we did it that way, where you went into the studio and you might have done like a bed track, guitar, drums and bass, let's say, and built from there. But typically the drums are the first. You follow the drums.
And
so it's very important that you have, in my opinion, that opportunity, because let's say, for example, you play your guitar tracks to a click, and then the drummer comes in and plays to that. Can it work? Sure, but maybe he's going to do something, a certain fill or a certain thing that, oh shit, man, it would have been cool if I would have accent that or whatever. It's too late because you did it the other way around.
With every project you have been involved with, though, whether it be Withering Scorn, Walls of Blood, King Diamond, Megadeth, is there like a completely separate like mind frame or different creative energy that's channeled into every project, or is there like a method behind the madness that just applies to everything you're working with?
I don't think between all the bands, as far as how I fit into, say, let's say, from Megadeth to King Diamond to Testament, if I'm understanding your question correctly, all those situations, including our own, we're all handled the same way. I did all the same preparations for a tour or recording or whatever, same as for all of them, unless I misunderstood. Ask me the question again.
You answered it perfectly, as how different of like a creative mind frame it is depending on Megadeth or
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, creative. I wasn't involved with the songwriting in any of those. Well, of course, I didn't record with Testament. Just did some road work with them, filling in for Alex when he was unable to commit to the dates that were proposed for touring. Yeah, it was all pretty much, because I mean, they all have their identities, of course, between them, and you can tell who's who. But there is a common thing, the same kind of music, and for me, there were similarities, and there was a comfort zone for me because I grew up with that stuff and have a very good understanding of those bands.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering too, because with the Imperium album, but you also have Metal Illusion. I was wondering how different because in the end that is like a solo project. The only difference is that you had singers on Imperium. So was that at all like a completely separate entity as well? Like, because
that was different, because this was everything I've been known for doing is metal, which is great. But shortly after I left Megadeth, I just remember thinking, I want to do a proper instrumental album. What I mean by that is me and Sean had recorded some stuff in the earlier part of the 90s under the moniker of Eidolon. And for whatever retarded reason, we kept the name. I hate that name because nobody can pronounce it. Very few can. Anyway.
I can't.
Moving right along. So, yeah. Eidolon? No. So, yeah, that was the instrumental album was, and like I was going to say, we did some earlier stuff, but it was just a 4-track cassette demo, and it was okay for what it was, but it wasn't like, the quality of production I wanted it to. And at that point, after leaving Megadeth, I did have the facility to be able to record stuff on a professional level. I had gotten to that point after doing home recordings at that point for about 10 or 20 years, whatever it was. And 10 years. And so that was different because it wasn't a metal album. It had some of that in it. It had jazz fusion in it. It had rock. It had some progressive elements, because Jim from Saga wrote some of the music, some of the covers that we chose to do for fun. The Al Di Meola track was basically just to test out the other musicians and see how far they can go and see how good they were. That's why I did that song. But it came out really well. Very happy with that one, if you know that track on the album.
Yeah.
Then we did a couple of Jean-Luc Ponty tracks, Frank Zappa medley, and then some originals. They all came together really well. I think the album is, very cohesive. Yeah. I think if anybody listened to the album, and there was probably been a few not realizing that those songs are cover songs, because they're pretty deep tracks, even for those artists. I think it became together rather cohesive. Yeah.
I'm really glad.
That was different than the other ones. All the other ones were pretty much the same kind of formula. That was different in that, I was dealing with some different forms of music that I never recorded before, and was determined to. It's like, even if I just have one good instrumental album that I could look back at and listen to and still like in 10 or 20 years, the game's won. And I did, and I still love the album. So I'm very, very happy that I did it. It was very hard, but I did it, and I'm very, very happy that I did it.
It's funny you mentioned that about Idolin, which is how I was going to pronounce it, because when I was asking you how different of a mindset it was, and I was mentioning the other ones, I didn't want to bother trying to.
That's okay. Yeah. That's all right. I mean, that's why, like, it was just a weird name anyway. And I don't know. We started recording some in '93 or so. I just got a 4-track cassette, like a glorified Porta Studio, if you may remember those. I don't know how old you are.
I was born in '93, so.
Okay, well, when you got into recording at home, if you started in the '80s and into the early '90s, we were working with Porta Studios, 4-track cassette players. For the most part, you really didn't hear of anybody having more sophisticated equipment like that recording at home. You went into a studio, and for me, it started from there. Because I'm a street engineer, as I call it. Because I didn't go to school, but I learned hands-on, which I is very valid, and having a good common sense and a know-how and an ear to achieve what you want to achieve on a certain level. I'm very fortunate that I have those tools, and I have it for a long time. And it was just Sean just came up with this name. Okay, that's the name of the project, or whatever the stupid thing is, because it was me and him together. But it was really guitar-driven instrumentals with a lot of solos and all that kind of. We grew up with shrapnel stuff, so we wanted to do something like that. We were still waving the flag into the '90s with that stuff, when it wasn't even in. But at this point, it was not cool to play solos. But we didn't care. And we're still the same. We don't care what's going on. We do what we want to do. I listen to the music I listen to, not because it's why are you listening to that? That's old. I listen to music because music is about music.
I listen to it because it's good. That's why.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't care what you listen to. If you like it and that makes you happy, that's great, because music really is very therapeutic, and it's about being true to yourself. It's really very simple common sense.
Yeah. And even with that whole thing, the pronunciation thing, I still think 0 Hour, Seven Spirits, Nightmare World, Hollowed, Apparition they're all fantastic albums in itself. So in the end, those
there's some okay moments on some of that stuff. I think once you get into Nightmare World's got some good stuff on it. And then once we got into Culmination in those last 3 albums, I think that's where, the idea was we were supposed to go a little further with Nils when he came into the band on the last album. But he came into the band. Sean went to Sweden to Andy LaRocque's studio to record drums, and I just joined Megadeth and turned everything upside down. Yeah. And then he joined the band. That was the end of that, really. That was the last album. Because of that situation, and we don't care to go back to it. I don't like the name, and we just wanted to start something fresh.
Yeah. And the final question I wanted to ask you is, being both a musician but also being like, being like involved in the mixing and, like very much in the production aspect. I've always said that like it is as much of an instrument as the guitar work and everything else. Is there, but like I'd imagine that with, mixing and mastering and all that, there's like a certain technical proficiency that needs to be. I feel, is it fair to say that maybe there's like less emotion channeled into that versus, playing the guitar and getting lost in the instrument and the playing in a way? No, you're,
Well, yeah, it's a completely different animal for sure. I mean, when I'm playing, I feed off the music. It's not. I'm not an analytical player. I feed off the music. That's how I'm wired. That's how I grew up. I grew up by playing along with my albums and feeding from the music, jamming with other musicians, bands when we were in high school from that point on. So, many, many years. So it was always about feeding off the music and just, adapting to it. And it comes from here. It's something to do with here, but it comes from here too. And if you're a guitar player, I guess it comes from here. So, it's just about being inspired and trying to get the best performance. And that's as long as I'm in shape, playing wise, and it's a good day, and I'm digging the music, something probably decent will come out of that session. If I don't feel like recording, I don't. I've never forced myself to go, okay, you know what? Shit, I really don't want to do this. I would do it when I want to do it because that's the best way.
yeah, of course.
And so it should never be a thing where I better do this. You should do it because you want to, and don't worry about people, what they tell you what to do. Well, you should really work on your scale. You don't know any chords or anything. You just started playing, but you better work. It's just about, a lot of it's common sense. I think I'm kind of going to the guitar side for a second here. And maybe somebody's listening to this, just starting to get into playing guitar, start off small and play what you want to play and climb the mountains you want to. But going back to your question, yeah, I mean, it's just completely, you can't compare the two. I love mixing and putting things together. It's a challenge, but when I hear the development and things are going in the right direction, it's very inspiring for me in that way. But all part of the process, and that's part of what I do.
Yeah, because I'd imagine too, like the music, like with mixing, like the song itself, like it captures a moment, and then when you have to, put it in the computer to mix it, like that moment isn't really there anymore. So is it almost like revisiting that emotional spark? Can you even like get that back? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, after what's with me, no. Unless, well, I mean, after the album is finished and I put it on the shelf and I don't listen to it for a little while and I put it on, that's cool.
Yeah.
But after I finish mixing it, mastering, no, I've heard the song 6 million times, and but that's the necessary evil, if you want to call it, of doing that. It's the repeated listenings that where you make sure everything is good and making it the best you can in terms of the production, the mixing, all the levels, or all the performances there. Is everything that I'm using working? Maybe somebody will come up with an idea along the way while I'm mixing a song. Hey, you should add that, a sound effect like this. Oh, I didn't think about that. And this, of course, this is a good, handy thing to have. When you're trying to do something by yourself, you can achieve some cool things. But it's always good to have people to bounce ideas off of. And that's what we do as a band.
Yeah.
Somebody will say, hey, what about this? Oh, yeah, it's a great idea. I didn't think about that. Or you try something, it doesn't work. You just don't use it. Bring the fader down.
Yeah.
That's old school kind of talk.
Yeah. Well, you know what? No one artist has all the knowledge, so it's always great to. It's always
no, and there's no rules. It's what you want to do, and that is one thing I'm very proud of, is that we've always done things that we want, with all of those different things, with in terms of performance, the song structures, the overall production, the levels of where we want things to be. If you've noticed in some of our recordings, the guitars are quite loud. That's not because I just want to hear myself. That's a lot of us. That's Sean driving that, saying, "Man, the guitar is got to be right in your face." Going back to listening to albums like old albums like Ride the Lightning. When you first heard that album, guitars are just great guitar tone, right in your face. That kind of mentality. So we've kind of always had that. So when it comes to this kind of music, that's important as far as we're concerned.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation just with the release of this Withering Scorn album, Prophets of Demise. Is there just anything else you'd like to promote in terms of shows we could be expecting, or more new music in the works, if you're
No
allowed to say?
shows yet. The album has just been released, as you know, so there's no talk about doing anything like that yet. But yeah, the album's out. Find it just about anywhere. Amazon, Frontiers store. It's all over the place.
Really, yeah.
CD and digital download. I'm not sure about a vinyl release. That could be coming soon, but I haven't got word on that yet. But we're looking forward to that coming out. We'd like that to happen. And that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Glen Drover of Withering Scorn. Be sure to check out Prophets of Demise, out now on Frontiers. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.